God's chosen ones. How the body reacts when you enter your final awakening. Her chest tightened, not from panic, but prophecy. At first she thought it was exhaustion, until the mirrors started lying, until her voice no longer sounded like her own, until the ringing in her skull matched the pulse of her dreams. And when she reached for her favorite sweater, her skin recoiled like it had touched a lie. This wasn't sickness. This wasn't stress. This was heaven cracking her open from the inside out. And if your body's been betraying you lately, if your voice feels foreign, if silence screams louder than words, then maybe, just maybe, you're not falling apart, you're finally awakening. And if you're one of God's chosen, then this message was written in heaven with your name on it.
Elena used to trust her body. As a nurse, she believed in charts, symptoms, cycles, diagnoses. She knew what a balanced diet did. She knew what stress looked like. But none of this was that. It started on a Tuesday. She had just come back from her shift, kicked off her shoes and sat down with a cup of chamomile tea, when her chest suddenly squeezed like it was hiding something sacred. She stood up, dizzy. Her hands trembled, but her heart felt expectant, like something had entered her but hadn't introduced itself yet. She couldn't sleep. Every night she jolted awake between 3:16 and 3:30, 3 a.m., her body hot and electric. The room would feel heavy, the air thick. Not haunted, but holy, like someone was watching or waiting. Her appetite vanished. Meat made her gag, her favorite mac and cheese, suddenly sour. But when she ate watermelon in silence, something felt divine, like she was being fed from another realm. Then came the mirrors. Her eyes looked bigger, her jaw was tighter, her face different. She whispered to herself, "I'm not sick. I'm being rewritten," and that terrified her. She stopped telling friends. They'd say it was hormones or trauma. But this didn't feel like pain. It felt like prophecy. One night, her daughter Mia called. Mia had moved out a year ago, the relationship strained. "Mom, are you okay? You sound different." Elena answered slowly, "I don't know how to explain it, but I think God is rebuilding me from the inside." She began keeping a journal, a strange one. She didn't write thoughts, she wrote symptoms. Because they didn't feel random, they felt like coded messages. Tight chest, skin rejecting clothes, ringing in left ear, sudden desire to fast, staring at the moon for hours, time slowing down in prayer. What if this isn't malfunction? What if this is the soul taking back the body? Because the more her body resisted, the more her spirit responded. She stopped praying to God. She started feeling like God was inside her, purging everything false. Maybe the final awakening doesn't feel like peace. Maybe it feels like your biology being burned into truth. And if your body has started rejecting comfort, if your sleep is broken by something sacred, if even your skin knows when someone is lying, then you're not broken. You're becoming holy ground. Part 1. The chest that wouldn't breathe. It started with a whisper under her ribs. Soft pressure. Not pain, not panic, just presence. At first, Elena thought it was a panic attack, but her breath wasn't racing. It was pausing, like something was trying to come through the spaces between her ribs. Not from fear, but from God. She sat on the edge of her bed, one hand on her heart, one hand gripping the edge of the blanket, waiting for the pressure to pass. It didn't. Instead, it deepened. And she began to weep, not from sadness, but from recognition. "I know this," she whispered. "I very felt this, in worship, in birth, in loss, but never like this." Each morning after that, her chest would tighten the moment the sun rose. Not like asthma, like an anointing. When she walked into the church she once found comfort in, the sanctuary felt too small. The hymns echoed too shallow. Her chest pulsed, as if the walls were too thin to hold what she was now carrying. That week she stopped praying the way she used to, because when she tried to speak, her breath caught. not out of fear, but reverence. One day during silence, her entire chest burned like incense. It wasn't pain, it was prophecy. It was as if her soul had been sealed for years, and now the seal was breaking. This isn't suffocation, she realized. This is my heart expanding. And what if the breath you can't seem to catch isn't being taken from you, but being replaced by something divine? The doctors found nothing. Her lungs were fine, her EKG perfect, but the fire in her chest? No scan could measure it, because heaven doesn't show up on hospital charts. So when the pressure comes, when you feel like you can't breathe, what if you're not breaking down? What if you're being filmed? Not with air, all with assignment, with light, with holy burden, because only God's chosen ones feel the weight of heaven sitting in their lungs.
Part 2. When touch became electric. It happened when she reached for her sweater, the soft one, the one she wore on every hard day, every heartbreak. But the moment her skin touched the fabric, she flinched, not because it was rough, but because it felt false. Elena dropped it like it had bitten her. Her fingertips tingled, not like pins and needles, but like static had leapt from the fibers. Like God had embedded a warning inside cotton. She began to notice it with everything. The couch where she used to numb out now felt like it held secrets. The pillows she clung to during old grief made her jaw tighten. Even her old worship hoodie, worn and beloved, felt like it carried a memory she hadn't healed yet. Her hands buzzed, sometimes burned, sometimes went ice cold at the exact moment someone fake walked into the room, when her friend Cassandra stopped by, laughing like usual. Elena hugged her and nearly gasped. Her back burned, not in injury, in warning. "Odd," she whispered later. "Why does my body keep reacting to people before my heart can?" She stopped ignoring it, and the more she paid attention, the clearer the pattern. People whose energy was clean, her body softened. People whose smiles hid agendas, her shoulders stiffened like shields. Conversations with no depth, her skin crawled. It wasn't anxiety, it wasn't trauma. It was spiritual discernment moving through her touch. She tried putting on perfume one day, the same fragrance she wore back when she was her old self. It made her nauseous. "I'm not rejecting the scent," she whispered. "I'm rejecting the season it belonged to." She reached for her Bible, the old one, marked with tears and notes, and something shifted. The pages vibrated. Her fingers trembled. She wasn't just reading it anymore. She was translating it with her skin. Touch had become electric, and her body wasn't malfunctioning. It had become a spiritual filter. "If it doesn't carry truth," she wrote in her journal, "my hands won't hold it. So if you felt certain fabrics sting, or some hugs make your spine tighten, don't doubt your body. Don't silence that warning. You're not too sensitive. You're being trained. Because God's chosen ones aren't just hearers of the word. They become vassals so pure, they can feel when something carries darkness, even through silk." Part 3. The ringing in her skull wasn't tinnitus. At first it was faint, a shimmer of sound in the back of her mind, like a bell struck in another dimension, soft but persistent. It happened in stillness, in prayer, in silence, always just before the light changed. Elena tilted her head, trying to chase it, but the sound didn't live in the air. It lived inside her skull, behind the ears, beneath the bone. It pulsed like code. She asked her doctor. He smiled kindly. "Could be tinnitus, happens with age. But this wasn't static. This wasn't damage. This was music." From somewhere her soul remembered. She began hearing it during worship, not in the speakers, in her marrow. High-frequency tones, vibrating like glass, sometimes low hums that rose when she closed her eyes. One morning, after a long night of weeping, it surged so loud she fell to her knees. Not in pain, in awe. "It's not a ringing," she whispered. "It's a frequency, and heaven's trying to teach me how to hear it." She started tracking it in her journal. 3:33 a.m. loud pitch after prayer. Before a breakthrough, faint crystal tone. After speaking truth, deep hum in left ear. Before a betrayal, sharp chime behind right eye. It was never random. The sound was prophetic, and her skull had become an antenna. One night, she dreamt of Elijah. He stood by a waterfall, holding a ram's horn. He said, "The veil is thin. Your ears are catching the echo of what's coming." When she woke up, the sound was back, this time accompanied by chills down her spine. And when it stopped, she missed it. Not because it was beautiful, but because it made her feel watched over, protected, tapped into something no one else could hear. Sometimes she'd hear the tone during someone else's confession, sometimes during silence, sitting beneath the sky, but always when truth was present. The sound followed truth like thunder follows lightning. "I'm not crazy," she wrote. "I'm just being tuned. So if your ears have been ringing, if you feel pulses in your temples, or a hum that lives under your skin, you're not broken. You're being activated, because God's chosen ones don't just hear noise. They hear instructions disguised as frequency. And when the world grows loud with lies, heaven whispers through bone." Part 4. The mirror that started lying. It was just toothpaste. A mundane Tuesday morning. She leaned in over the sink, eyes half open, and froze. The woman in the mirror blinked, but didn't feel like her. Something was different. Too different. Elena stared harder. Her pupils looked deeper. Her face, softer, but somehow more severe. Not aged, just ancient. Like someone had etched prayers into her cheekbones. Her jaw was tight, like it was holding back thunder. The curve of her lips had changed, no longer curling to please, but to pierce. Her stare was unblinking, too quiet, too knowing. "This isn't my face," she whispered. "This is someone else's mission." She rubbed her eyes, washed her cheeks, but the feeling wouldn't leave. She no longer saw herself. She saw a version of her that had survived things only heaven could explain. The woman in the mirror wasn't seeking approval. She was carrying authority, and it rattled Elena to her bones. Later that day, someone stopped her at the grocery store. "Do I know you from somewhere?" She shook her head. "No," she said, but she wasn't sure that was true, because even her reflection wasn't sure anymore. She used to wear expressions to fit in. Now, her face refused to lie. It told the truth without words. "I'm not performing anymore," she wrote in her journal. "Even my face knows who I really am." And she began noticing it everywhere. People looked at her, then looked away, quickly, uncomfortably. Children stared at her with wonder. Some friends avoided eye contact altogether. Her ex called out of nowhere and said, "You sound clear." Too clear. And it wasn't just her face. Her eyes had changed. Light made them water. Shadows made them shine. They weren't windows anymore. They were warnings. Because when you've been rewritten by God, your face stops reflecting the world and starts reflecting what the world is afraid to see. Clarity. Unshakable identity. So if mirrors have started lying, if your own gaze feels like prophecy, If people stare, then retreat. Not because you're loud, but because you're undeniable. Don't flinch. Don't go back. You're not becoming someone else. You're becoming who you were before the world lied to you. And God's chosen ones always come back wearing faces that feel like holy memory. Part 5. The hunger that wasn't hunger. It crept in quietly. At first, it was just disinterest. Meals she used to love, pasta drowned in sauce, buttery toast at midnight, now made her stomach fold in protest. She thought it was stress, maybe grief, maybe early menopause, but something deeper whispered, "You're not starving, you're shedding." Days passed, and her body stopped asking for food. No rumble, no cravings, just silence. And yet, she wasn't weak. Strangely, she felt clearer, lighter, as if something else was feeding her, like breath itself had become sustenance. Water, fruit, a handful of almonds. That was all she could tolerate. Anything more felt heavy, like trying to swallow the past. One evening, Cassandra invited her to dinner. The table overflowed, roasted meats, wine, creamy desserts. But Elena could barely stomach the smell. Her hand hovered over the bread basket, then pulled back. It's not just the food, she realized. It's the frequency. She remembered something she once heard. Then the spirit starts leading, the body stops begging. And that's what this was. Her appetite hadn't disappeared. It had evolved. She wasn't fasting from food. She was fasting from everything false. The processed comfort of her former life, the emotional sugar of people-pleasing, the overindulgence in things that numbed but never nourished. Even how she prepared food changed. She started blessing her water, peeling oranges like sacred offerings, eating slowly, silently, like she was taking communion with the earth itself. It was no longer about filling. It was about aligning, and when she did eat, her body told her instantly. If it was in agreement with her spirit, one night she forced herself to eat pizza just to prove she was still normal. She ended up on the floor, trembling, clutching her gut. Not from illness, from rejection. "Your system knows," she whispered to herself. "It remembers what purity tastes like now." This wasn't a diet. This wasn't detox. This was divine design. Her body wasn't trying to disappear. It was trying to make room for something holy, for something called calling. So if food has started feeling foreign, if your hunger has shifted from flavor to light, if your body wants silence more than sugar, you are not broken. You are being recalibrated. Because the chosen ones don't just get fed by bread. They get nourished by fire. You're not malfunctioning. You're becoming holy ground. She thought she was breaking, losing her mind, losing control, losing herself. But the truth was far more sacred. She wasn't breaking down. She was breaking open. Her body wasn't betraying her. It was initiating her. Every strange symptom, the tight chest, the ringing in her skull, the loss of appetite, they weren't signs of collapse. They were confirmations. Confirmation that she was chosen. Confirmation that she was stepping out of illusion. Confirmation that heaven had started building a temple inside her skin. There comes a moment in every chosen one's life when the body begins to speak a new language. Not English, not science. A language where a burning chest means your heart is expanding. A vibrating spine means your calling is awakening. A loss of hunger means your soul is ready to be fed differently. You don't need a diagnosis. You need discernment. Because final awakening is not a diagnosis. It's a divine recalibration. Let me tell you something no one else may have the words for. You are not malfunctioning. You are becoming holy ground. You were never meant to survive this world unchanged. You were meant to dissolve, so God could rebuild you in His frequency. So when your body tightens in church, when you can't stomach the old comforts, when mirrors stop making sense, pause. Don't panic. You are not sick. You are sacred. Because only the chosen, only the ones marked for divine assignment, experience this level of holy disruption in their biology. You are not crazy. You're chosen. Your body is proving it. Maybe God didn't choose you to be seen, but to be sustained in secret. Are you sure you're not one of the chosen, just because you haven't seen a miracle yet? If this story stirred something inside you, if it felt like a confirmation you couldn't explain, comment below. My body is awakening. Let others find hope through your words. Share this video with someone whose body feels like a battlefield, because maybe they're not being punished, they're being prepared. Subscribe, the next story goes even deeper. Your spirit will know when it arrives. And if you feel called to support this mission, trust God's leading in the description below. Not for money, but for the movement, toward the message, for the next one who needs it. Because one day soon, you'll stop asking for signs and start becoming one